Okay, so someone wanted my opinion about unschooling. Well, here's the thing. Your values as a parent are going to have to be incorporated at a very young age. At a very young age. And it's up to the parent to figure out how they want to teach their child to make it in the world that we live in. Because yes, you live in a society where it has a specific political ideology. You're going to have to teach your child how to be able to make it in a society that maybe you don't agree with everything that's out there. Now, some parents have taken it to where they want to homeschool their kid because they don't want to have their kid be taught things that are being taught in the system right now. And so they are taking it upon themselves to homeschool their kid. Okay, that's great. That is your choice. If you have the means to homeschool your child, do it. Because yes, you're going to have to qualify for basic, it's like, you're going to have to prove that you can get along in our society and learn the basic principles of a checkbook, of reading, writing, comprehension, a little bit of American history because you're an American if you're doing it in America. And then you can teach whatever spin on American history you want because you have a captive audience. Your kids are going to be taught by you. When you give your kid to the system, yes, the system is going to teach their perspective on everything based upon who's in charge, who's in office. Okay, and yes, the Office of Education has specific socialist, maybe / communist principles. Okay, fine, whatever. What can you do? But it just depends upon if you have the means. Now, you can, if your child is very strong and they're doing the J-juice and they're very strong and they're able to handle being in a very diverse community, such as public school, even in a nice area, they can handle, they can handle whatever is going on. And if they're being taught something such as this type of history, and then you have a different spin on it, then you teach them a different spin. Having that open communication with your kid is paramount. It's when parents don't have that open communication and their kids are being taught one thing and you have a specific ideology about something, but you're not able to express that, or you and your child have, like, your lines of communication have been closed off. So there's no way you can get your point across to then give the kid two different sides of the same story. And so this is where being involved in your child's education, even if you're not homeschooling them, is also very important. But if you believe in the system's way of teaching your children, then, it's not going to matter. You'll just send them off to school. They get taught whatever. You're there kind of in the background saying, okay, do your homework, but you're not really taking interest in what subject matters are being covered and the spin on it. Okay, fine. Your kid's going to be a product of the system, which is fine because they have to go and work in the system. They have to understand. They don't want to be totally anti-government, anti-system, because they're going to have to make it in a system that's going to be feeding them and clothing them and giving them opportunities. So you don't want to completely undermine your child's ability to be able to make it in a world that has a specific line of thought, especially if they're going to be living in that specific society. So, but if you then the internet and your like-minded groups are going to be your bread and butter. I mean, if you're a Mormon, like, the Mormons have a huge community. So if you homeschool your kid and you have like-minded people who are Mormon, those are the people that are going to keep you alive. Those are the people that you're going to sell your product to. You're going to do that's where the whole MLMs came from, is these communities like the Mormons and the Jehovah's Witnesses, okay, because it's such a huge community and they can sell to each other and they keep all the money within their community. But if you're not part of the Mormon community or part of the Jehovah's Witness community and you're part of, like, the mainstream, then you're going to have to learn mainstream values and target mainstream. So it depends upon what community you're going to be circulating in. And it wouldn't make sense to have mainstream values going into a Mormon society that doesn't really recognize, maybe some of the tenets of the mainstream values. And so it's like, you're going to make sure that your kids can be able to compete and have enough people out there that they can relate to. And so that's why people get into like these Ivy League schools, because those are the people that are going to be rubbing shoulders with in high levels of government. So that's why you're seeing these Hollywood types that are bribing these schools, because they want their kids to be rubbing shoulders with senators and politicians, because that's who they want their kids to run in the circles with. Okay? So when you are unschooling your kid, you better make sure they have a community they can relate to and move around with. But does it make sense? Does it make sense that you teach a kid something that they can't take to the real world and make it marketable? Now, we have a huge anti-vax community, a huge pro-vax community, all these different subsets of belief systems, but you have to be resolute in knowing what your beliefs are and then who that community is that you're targeting. But if you're trying to go for these jobs that have so many different types of belief systems, are they going to be able to compete and relate to those people? Because they want this really awesome job, high level, but they don't have the background in this type of culture. And so you don't want to take them, you don't want to undermine their ability to be able to relate to all types of cultures. You want to have them understand there's so many different cultures and peoples and belief systems, and it's okay to have a different belief system as long as the bottom line and the American, the Constitution and Bill of Rights and all that stuff, as well as the specific industry they're going into, as long as that is the common ground. And so I really don't have an opinion on unschooling. It just depends. I mean, because there's some pretty tough schools out there where kids are so tough, they beat each other up and all of that. It's like survival of the fittest. And so when your kid's undergoing that type of stuff, you want to take them out of that and put them in the right community that's going to be beneficial for them. So, I don't have kids. I'm glad I don't have any kids, because I don't have to be dealt, I don't have to face that. But if I were to have a child, I would probably homeschool and then find other people that are like me, and then maybe go to a class, like find a type of homeschooling where you do go to a class maybe once a month, where you are with people and with the teacher, to be able to know how to socially integrate yourself around other people when it comes to classroom stuff. Because when you're at home, when you're being homeschooled at home, you're not going to get that type of experience of being in a class, listening to somebody for at least 5 or 6 hours and going over questions or going over content. Because when you get out there in the real world and you go to college, or when you go to any kind of training for a company, you have to have those types of experiences to know how to act. Okay, so it just depends on how you run your homeschool and what you're preparing your child for. And if you're preparing your child to be like this subverter, this person that's anti-everything, they're not going to be able to make it. They're going to have to find a way to assimilate. But you can still teach your kid to have their own mind and not completely buy into everything that's out there. But they're going to have to be exposed to it, because they're going to be at some point. You can't get away from it. You can't put your kid in a bubble. You can't. They're going to have to be exposed to different thought processes and different belief systems, and then also be resolute in their own. And so you don't want to come off like the mainstream is the enemy. The system is alive, and it's changing all the time. And can you adapt to the changes of the system and the changes of the environment, and the changes of the politics and the changes of the educational institution? And then there's kids out there that are very, very imbalanced, that will be bullies, that will beat up your kid if your kid shows any kind of weakness. And so you have to know your kid too. And you have to listen to your kid. And sometimes kids don't say all the time that they're being bullied or they're being abused, because there are some kids that don't say anything. So you have to be the one to really recognize who your kid is and what kind of shortcomings as well as strengths that they have, and recognize how that's going to then be viewed out there in the schoolyard, and you be in tune. Because I'm telling you, some kids don't say anything at all to their parents on how they're being bullied or what's going on, because they're too afraid, or they're too ashamed. And so anytime you put your kid in some public institution, you take the risk, run the risk of something happening out there. So that's when you have to really, really understand and be in tune and have open lines of communication. Okay? So I don't think unschooling is horrible, as long as you prepare the child for the community they're going to be competing in, and you make sure that they are prepared to compete at the highest level. Okay? So that way they have so many choices. If they want to belong to government, that's fine. If they want to be a total subverter and be like this offshoot, whatever it is, live off the grid, and fine. But is that really doing a service for your kid, or doing a disservice? So it's all about how you train your kid to adapt to the current conditions and be exposed to all thought processes. And then the kid makes their own choice, but you make the choices for them that's good for them, but you still prepare them for the world. You don't put them in a bubble and completely take them out of reality. Because then when they finally want to break free from what they think is a prison, and then they go and experience what they've been withheld from, they're going to go nuts. Okay? So you allow your kids to have as many experiences that are safe, that you can kind of oversee and be exposed to, but you don't want them to get lost in something that may not be good for them. So that's where you have to understand the body, mind, and spirit. That's why people that are on the J juice doing the homeschooling and recognizing the system is what it is, you bring all that together, you don't put them in a bubble, they'll be a very well-rounded, very strong individual, recognizing there are people with different levels of decomposition, different imbalances, and to watch out for this and watch out for that. And you get their hormones under control, because you can have, promiscuous kids all the way to kids that are bullies and aggressive, to where kids are also then very submissive, that will be abused. So, I feel bad for parents today having to deal with all of those things, because, once those hormones are put in place and those imbalances are triggered, it's very hard to then balance them out to where they're they're shooting, or what. It's very hard to get them all balanced out, because kids do get used to having a certain type of hormone, at the surface, and to change those hormones and to suppress or to express the right and the wrong hormones, all of that stuff, it does take a major adaptation, and some kids are not very good at adapting to changes. And so, start them out young, you guys. Get them on the J juice young, so it's not going to be that difficult to then have them adapt to different environments, because they're going to have to. Remember, when you're a child, you are now learning the world, and you're going to be taking on all these environments that are going to be a bit challenging. And so your kid has to be strong enough to be able to adapt to all the exposure of everything, so that way they can compete on an equal playing field. Okay? And so I feel for all parents nowadays, trying to handle their own life and their own imbalances, and then try to raise a kid with so many imbalances out there, as well as the kids' imbalances. Oh my God. So yeah, my husband and I chose we're not going to have kids, because that would be too much of a headache. Okay. So no, I don't necessarily believe in unschooling. I think that it's up to the parent to figure out how to make their kid well-rounded and prepared to compete in any environment. And so yeah, we don't want to put kids in a bubble, just like the whole anti-vax. You can't live in a bubble. Your kid can't be in a bubble. They've got to be exposed to something, but you can control the exposure, so they don't have to be a gladiator in the schoolyard. But you get them prepared for what they're going to have to take on, as far as sitting in a classroom, listening to somebody speak, because college, if you want your kids to go to college, which yes, you're going to learn some very left-wing, whatever, But that's your kid's choice. If they want to get into medicine, if they want to get into this, want to get into that, give them all the opportunity in the world. If they take part in the system that is degrading people, okay, you know what? That's their choice. But get them on the JJUICE, will they take part in that? Who knows? Sky's the limit when you get somebody on JJUICE and they start inventing something that people need and then capitalize on that. But you'll never know until you change your biochemistry, and then your kids' biochemistry is going to change. And then they start seeing possibility. They read the internet and they're like, oh my God, here's a need here, here's a need here, here's a need here. I'm going to invent something that's going to help humanity. Instead of perpetuating the machine, they create a different machine that's much better for humanity. So you have no idea what is going to be the outcome of a JJUICE, a child on the JJUICE, especially with the amount of information that's at their fingertips. And they look in their community, see like what the need is, and they start fulfilling those needs. And they make money off it too. But you'll never really see that for what it is until you stay on the JJUICE and stay on it. And then you're able to then find a way to give your kids the necessary skills for them to be able to write a coherent sentence, use grammar, right? No run-on sentences. And they're able to write essays, they're able to do relatively easy business, basic math. I mean, there's just so much that you have to prepare your child for. And so it all depends on how well balanced you are as a parent, on whether or not it's appropriate to unschool them and then reschool them with a lot more opportunity. Okay, so good luck. All right, bye.